Good morning, this is FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. I'm at the Environments for Aging Conference in Chattanooga, and I'm with Jane Rohde with JSR Associates. Jane, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kemp. How are you today?
Great. It's good to see you. So this show, as an annual show, it moves around and comes into secondary markets, and they pick this city, right?
And Chattanooga's been a great place for this.
A lot of people who know you, we did a focus on leadership on you in October of 19. One of your hobbies is Harley Davidson, and you actually rode your bike down here from where JSR is headquartered up in Baltimore, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We started a new nonprofit called Live Together Community, and we decided to do it as a fundraiser. So I left there from Baltimore, and we went to Virginia, and then Durham, and then through the Gap into Tennessee, little tail of the dragon, and then came to Chattanooga.
Real quick, remind my listeners why it is that you are the guru for senior living and the guidelines in senior living. You studied the Federer family in Germany.
Yeah, the Fugger guys. I have an architectural background, but I've worked in the senior living sector for over 30 years, and we've been working on different care models and trying to work through that to change what we have. We've institutionalized elders for far too long, and so we've been looking at alternative models to try to not do that. So social type communities, living with intergenerational communities so that you have services available, but you're living with other ages, because it's not really a normal thing to just segregate or isolate all our elders into one place. So that's kind of been the premise for a lot of the work that we do, and a passion for loving older people and vulnerable populations. So we work with at-risk youth as well. It's been part of my career and my life. I have two girls who are 44 who are in the system, in the foster care system. So we've worked through what could we do that would help vulnerable populations, and that's how we got to live together in terms of a community model.
You gave a presentation this morning, and they identified you as the mother of the residential guidelines. Tell us a little bit about that.
Other than being Khaleesi for the Games of Thrones, which is how they structured that photo, the guidelines were considered regulatory barriers and to more person-centered care environments. So as a result of being able to change the regulations that then become their guidance that's used for licensing code, so by able to changing the licensing code, we can allow people to do things that aren't institutional. So all of our regulations have all been geared toward more of a hospital acute care kind of a model, where it's really not looking at the resident from both a care services and home type of setting. And so most residents are done by diagnosis, and so 10% your diagnosis, but 90% is the person. So how do we reflect the 90% of that person in terms of a living environment instead of thinking of it as a care environment? And so it's a kind of it's a switch in mentality and thought. Thanks to Rob Mayer from the Mayer Rothschild Foundation, he helped us do that with the Facility Guidelines Institute to basically create our own book, and we call it Residential Health Care and Support Facilities, because it's everything from nursing homes, hospice, but it's also adult daycare, it's assisted living, it's independent living. There's a full continuum that we look at. So there's both licensed items in terms of community styles and types of projects, as well as unlicensed that are included in the guidelines, because we know that helps designers to be able to look at things from a full spectrum.
I sat in on this morning, and I was surprised to hear, you talking about a minimum standard for the size of a bedroom, and how much area around the bed you have to take care of those people, and say to kitchens, how kitchens should be designed. And so you get into a lot of details about how residential space should be designed in a senior living environment, right?
Yeah, and part of that is because it's all the devil's in the details, as we'll say, because people are like, well, what do you mean that you get down into like lighting and seat heights and arm heights and flooring and all the other characteristics of what finishes, surfaces, materials need to be? Because all of those can either create an opportunity for someone to be more independent, or they can restrict them. So like if your seat depth is too deep and someone can't get out of a chair independently because they can't place their feet on the floor and tuck their heels under the butt, then they can't get up by themselves, right? So we know that if we can be very intentional about how we design, we can look at those details, because those are the surfaces that you touch, that you feel, that help support you, that you sit in, that you stand next to, that you're using tables, all of those things. So we try to look at all the details and then include that either in guidance and in terms of appendix, versus the shall part that you heard about today that was like the minimum code part. But then we add additional information within the appendices for guidance, so people know what they're looking for and why.
Let's talk about flooring, since our audience is mostly tuned into that. I guess primarily it's LVT and some carpet, right, depending on the acoustical needs and the cleanup needs?
Yes, that's true. And LVT has been a huge boon for the market because we used to have more institutional looking flooring, so therefore to have it hold up the way we needed to for incontinence and other issues and food spills and all that type of thing. So the nice part about LVT is that it holds up like a commercial flooring you'd want to for institutional care, but it looks like residential. And so it's the aesthetic that has just been a huge boon for our market. We do use a lot of carpet still too, but a lot of times we do that with vinyl backing and other kinds of backing that also creates a moisture barrier for the same type of reasons. But we can also vary the heights. We can use a rubber underlayment underneath the LVT, for example, and we've done that with different mill thicknesses and then use carpet with a different mill thickness and addresses the acoustic need in addition to addressing the height, and so that the heights are smooth, so the transitions are all smooth, so you have zero thresholds. And ADA is something that people all know about, but it wasn't designed for elders. That was designed for returning veterans with upper body strength. And so older adults typically don't have as much upper body strength. So we've tried to modify some of the guidelines to accommodate for that, and even worked with the Federal Access Board to try to change some of that nomenclature as well.
So since elderly usually have cataracts and problems seeing, there's also some guidelines as far as coloring and not just material type, but what it looks like as well, right?
Yeah, it's the aesthetic side of it, but it's also the light reflectance values. So when we look at a surface, for example, how people perceive it. So there's a University of Pennsylvania did a study of how we perceive space. We perceive it by the edges. So if you think about flooring coming to a wall surface, for example, your brain uses that information to know where you are in space. And so by doing that, you can use a contrast of the light reflectance value of usually 30% is what we use kind of as a standard. But if with your flooring and your wall can be 30 LRV difference, whether you have a lighter floor and a darker wall or a lighter wall and a darker floor, then people know where they are in space. But it also allows them to cue it, so you can use it for handrails. So behind the handrail is a contrast, behind the toilet is a contrast. So we try very hard to work through that with various materials for the flooring too. And so we also find that with flooring for doing integrated showers. So if you can do the flooring as an integrated part of the shower, it reduces falls as well. So there's a few products out there on the market that allow us to take sheet vinyl directly into a drain. That's a very helpful product for someone like me because that allows us to do a contrast to the wall and to the floor, but also something that doesn't have a threshold.
Interesting. We're about out of time. I just want to quick mention that you also have a role with the RFCI, the Resilient Floor Covering Institute. You're a technical advisor, right?
Yeah, I'm the technical consultant. So our dear friend Bill Freeman, who was my predecessor, Bill recommended me for that position. I thought, wow, those are big shoes to fill. I've learned a lot, and the members have been awesome because we've been doing a lot of environmental work right now for sustainability. So we're redoing our NSF 332 sustainable standard for flooring. We're doing a pilot program with Building Transparency on the EC3 tool, which is embodied carbon. We're looking at doing another CEU program in sustainability, and we're starting to do more of an outreach to the A&D market on education, so connecting the education and the technical side together into good performance information.
Are you going to the meeting in Scottsdale later this year?
For the board meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be there at the board meeting. We're also having a marketing meeting in Atlanta, too, so we'll be doing both.
I'll see you in Scottsdale. Jane, it's great to catch up with you. Thanks for telling our listeners what's going on in the environments for aging market. Again, been talking to Jane Rohde, principal with JSR Associates, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.